Welcome to the third part in this video where we go over some things I forgot to mention of my carless or car-lite city. I did not script write this video at all, but I do have a list of some things that I'm going to talk about, and I'll put chapter markers to all those things that I'm talking about in this video. So if you want to skip to one or the other, depending on whatever you're interested in, then feel free to do that. I believe I'm going to talk about this later, but let's mention transfers and integration. So all the modes would be highly integrated with each other. There would be no real such thing as a transit center, because all of the metro stations would pretty much be transit centers, each and every one. Again, I'm not going to go too detailed into this just because, again, I'm going to make a separate video on this later on how to and how not to integrate other modes of transit together. But in general, where the metro stations are, there will be a station building, and around that station building will be bus bays that you could enter or exit through buses. And there will be a loop of streetcar track that goes through here as well, so you could transfer directly to or from a streetcar. And at one station, I took huge inspiration from Toronto here, there would be an underground streetcar loop. I don't remember exactly what the station's called because I haven't looked at my map in a while. I made it quite a while ago, but I'll zoom into it on my map. This station here has a streetcar loop at it, and this streetcar loop would be underground. So as the tracks approach the station here, they begin to descend below street level into a cut and cover tunnel. And then there would just be a simple loop of track, and then it would just come back. Streetcars wouldn't really have time to have a layover here. You just pretty much come in, drop passengers off, take in new passengers, and then you're off. Now, this particular station has that streetcar loop in it, and then if you keep walking straight through, you could get all the way into the metro station by just simply going down to platform level from there. It would be that simple, and you'd never have to go outside. And the reason for all of this integration is, again, to make it easiest for passengers. You don't want your passengers walking through a 12-mile long tunnel just to get from the train to the bus or to their business or whatever. You should be able to very easily and conveniently do so right at the station building. So that's the reason behind this, and that's the reason many other cities have done this as well. Not all metro stations are going to have this nice loop of buses at it, because in some ways it's not the best use of space. If you're in the dense heart of downtown, you are not going to find these bus loops. Instead, you will find large high-rise towers, but the first floor of that high-rise tower will have an entrance to the subway station, and I believe to be up to code there needs to be 2 entrances, and yeah, figure all that part out. Now on to Metro Line E. So let's talk about the special operation for this. This line doesn't really need to exist, and as you see from my map, you could just have it extend, you could just have the C line extend off to the airport. But I wanted to have a special line dedicated to the airport, and I wanted an Airport Express, because I know that those can be incredibly powerful. It can be an incredibly powerful tool that people can use, because if you're visiting the city for the first time, what would you rather take? A normal train into the city center or a faster train into the city center? You probably want to get to downtown quickly, which is one benefit of this is a tangent. I knew this was going to happen, but if you have a train system, train stations are right in the heart of your city center. I'm sure we've all noticed that. But airports need to be out in the middle of a field where there's nothing, because planes are really loud and need a lot of space to land, and a whole host of reasons. So it'd be nice to be able to actually get from the airport to downtown quickly, which is what Metro Line E does. So like I said, these trains, all the metro trains run at 6-minute frequency all day long. But because most of Line E interlines with the C and A lines at pretty much, like I said, the entire length, that means trains on these particular segments actually arrive every 3 minutes, which is amazing. So everywhere where it interlines with the C line is entirely express. This corridor would be quad track. There would be 4 tracks. The outer two tracks would have side platforms, and those would be serviced by the C line trains. And the inner two tracks would be trains just constantly bypassing the stations, and those would be the E line trains. The Evergreen Village station would be a huge transfer point for 3 lines, C, D, and E. They would actually all serve this station. The D line would be on a separate platform, it'd be separate from this, but the quad track C and E trains would both serve Evergreen Village, with the C line being on the outer tracks and the E line serving the inner tracks. So you could have 2 island platforms here, and you could have a nice cross-platform transfer from one train to the other. So now that we've taken the train from the airport into downtown, let's talk about the waterfront. This would be one of the most relaxing places in the city, and you're in the highly dense areas, so it's important to have spaces like this. So you would have a nice waterfront that goes all the way around the river. That's usually why they're called waterfronts. Now this area would have 3 things in it, and it would not have a highway. I think that is among the stupidest things ever, is when highways are built right on the edge of the water where you could have a nice pedestrian environment. But this is car-centric America we're talking about, so we don't really do that here now, do we? Except that we're getting better. Slowly but surely. But anyways, in my Car-lite city, you would have a waterfront that would have 3 elements. These 3 elements would be sidewalk, bike lane, tram line, or streetcar line. Again, this is kind of borrowing examples sorta from Europe, but sorta not. Following the shape of the river all the way down through the whole area of downtown would be a large sidewalk right up along the water. There would be benches everywhere, there would be restrooms occasionally, and there would possibly be some event spaces as well, grassy fields where you could house events, or you could just do something as simple as a picnic. Tables would be set up, benches would be set up. It would be a relaxing place to be. Right next to the sidewalk, across some sort of physical divide, would be a 2-lane bike path. It would be nice and wide to allow for 2 lanes that would be marked down the middle so that you can actually tell that there's 2 bike lanes. And it would be separate from the sidewalk infrastructure. There would be bike lockers occasionally throughout the areas. Again, it's all the same area. Right next to that would very likely be a fence, some sort of fence that you can't walk beyond. And you would find the streetcar tracks with stations every once in a while at wherever the nearest, there would be stations along the way. These tracks would really just be in their own dedicated right-of-way, which is really nice. There wouldn't really be a lot of signals because there wouldn't be any intersections through here, so trains really could hit higher speeds. These would be incredibly frequent, and it would complete the look of the waterfront. This would be an incredibly important streetcar corridor, it would be an incredibly important project, and a lot of people would use it. This is not related, but it's starting to get kind of warm in here because this has been the hottest month of May ever. So, one second, let me go turn on my air conditioner. Actually, I could just perform a magic trick. Let's turn on the air conditioner. Oops, wrong magic trick. I should snap a little bit differently. Much better. Now, the one thing I'd also like to talk about here, about the waterfront, is about how quiet it would be. You would be right in the downtown area, and there would be lots of bridges everywhere with potentially lots of traffic going through, but there wouldn't actually be a lot of traffic because, again, the city just wouldn't have that many cars in it, and most, if not all, of the bridges wouldn't carry personal automobiles. Alright, now back to the transit system itself. Let's go delve a little bit deeper onto how my fare card system would work. I don't really have a working name for it, so I'm just calling it the fare card, or maybe tap card or something. But all you do is, it's just exactly like you'd expect. You just tap your card on the reader when you board trains or buses or whatever. So let's talk about, firstly, how to tap, and then I'll talk about the different structures and prices of the different modes. I'm going to use an Orca card to demonstrate the fare thing. So, When boarding a normal city bus, you just walk in through the front door and you tap your card on the reader just as you'd expect. That's pretty much it. As you exit the bus, pull the cord and exit through the back door if possible. My doors on the bus, the back door would just be a simple touch strip to open. The doors would not automatically open because that makes it much easier for fare evasion to happen, and it just introduces all sorts of issues. So the back door, you just touch the door and it will open, and that's it. No need to tap your card as you exit a bus. When it comes to the express buses, those super express buses I talked about, that can get you from the metro station all the way to some other destination with minimal to no intermediate stops, those require something a little bit different. Now, for sure, at each door of the bus, there would be 60-foot buses with 3 doors, there would be a card reader at each door. However, I would also be open to the idea of off-board fare payment, where you show up to the bus station and you just tap your card on the station before you even enter the bus, and that way when the bus shows up, you literally just walk in and have a seat. It takes even less time. Let's say a fare card reader were out of service on the station, you still are going to want the fare card readers on the bus. Or if you forget to pay for some reason at the platform, or if you run to the bus at the last second and go in through the back door, you can still tap your card on the reader. As far as STREETCAR goes, I'm a bit undecided about the whole thing, simply because I don't really know where to put the readers. You could put them on the station, which would make sense. That way you can tap there and then just hop onto the streetcar. But it also makes sense to have them in the streetcar. I don't know if I'd recommend having both, because you'd have a lot of streetcar vehicles and a lot of streetcar stops, and that's starting to sound really expensive. So I'd say just pick one. But actually, I've also considered having the streetcars free, or at least having the downtown stations free. So I'm not really sure about that. But I would say in general, I lean more toward placing the fare card readers on the stations themselves. That way you can just tap and then just hop on the streetcar. Now at the metro stations, you would have a set of fare gates. So you would go in through the entrance. It would actually probably have automatic doors. Go in through the entrance and you have a vestibule area that would have fare gates right in front of you. And so you'd walk up to the fare gate and tap your fare card reader right on them, and they open up. And you walk in and you're now in the fare paid zone. Within the metro, before the fare gates, you would have ticket machines probably on both sides. Lots of ticket machines. You would find those at the metro stations, at streetcar stops, and maybe at the express bus stops. But definitely the metro stations would have fare card readers, and where you could actually get the plastic fare cards right from the ticket machines. And you would even be able to put them in and possibly check your balance on them and load more money onto them. Although I'm not sure, I don't really have all that figured out. It may just be more wise to purchase the cards separately at a 7-Eleven or any convenience store that would actually deal with them. And that way you would actually just be able to check how much money you have right there without going into a station that has a ton of people at it and having sort of privacy issues, because, you know, it's going to have on screen exactly how much money you have on there, and maybe you wouldn't want to give that information out to anybody who's watching around you. So yeah, some things to consider. But the metro stations would probably have at least 4 ticket machines, 2 on one side, 2 on the other, that could accept cash, card, or whatever. And there might even be a way to return your card if, say, you're going to the airport and you're going to be leaving the city for a long time and you want to return your card. You could just put it back into the machine and take all the money back. So that way you could actually get some of that money back. I don't know if I'd necessarily want to do that with the ticket machines. That could also be something you could just go to that convenience store to have done. So again, lots of particulars, lots of very specific things about this. But anyways, after you tap your card on the fare card readers, the gates open up and you're within the station. When you exit a train, you just, again, walk all the way back. And when you come across the fare gates, let's say the fare gates are right here, you just walk through them and they'll open up. Just like they would in Toronto, you just walk through the fare gates. The entire metro system is one flat fare zone. In fact, pretty much everything is just one flat fare. So when you exit the station, you just exit the station. No need to tap your card. You only tap your card to gain access to the station. So that means if you're transferring from one metro line to another, it all happens within the paid fare zone. So if you're trying to transfer from one line to another, and all of a sudden you see fare gates in front of you, don't go through those. You're gonna exit to the outside if you do that. It all happens within the same station. You don't have to tap again or anything. You're just within the station completing your trip. The only mode of transit where you are going to have to tap at the beginning and at the end of your trip are on the regional vehicles, because regional will charge you based on how far you travel. Now, it's not like Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3. It's not like that. You're charged based on how many stations you travel. So if you only travel one station, you're only going to pay a little bit of money. But if you travel 6 stations, you're going to pay a little bit more money. And if you travel 10 or more, then you've capped out. You won't actually be charged any more than that. But you have to remember to tap at the beginning of your trip, and when you exit the vehicle, tap at the end of your trip. So on a regional bus, you'll tap as you enter the bus, and then as you exit the bus, you'll be reminded to tap your card as you exit. On the regional trains, the train platforms will have the card readers on the stations, so you tap there, you board the train, and at every station, it will remind you to tap your card as you exit the train to be charged the correct fare, and so you exit the train and tap again, and your fare will be properly paid. Now, if you're on a regional train line and you come into Union Station and transfer to a different train line, because it's all transferring all within Union Station, you don't have to worry about tapping a whole bunch of times or whatever. You tap at the beginning of your journey and you tap after you've arrived at your destination. That's it. Regardless of whether you're transferring between other trains, it doesn't matter. You tap at the beginning, you tap at the end, and that's it. I've made a couple of fare charts before, and so I'll put this one up that I made on Microsoft Word. This is not final at all, but this would be your standard fare that pretty much covers everything from bus rides, streetcar rides, which again, I might make the streetcars free, or at least free leaving downtown, or within the downtown area. Metros, those all have the same prices. But the regional has its own fare chart, which looks like this, and charges you based on how far you've traveled. And as you see on there, I also have low income fares, which you can apply for at the ticket office, which would very likely be at the Washington Square station, which is right in the middle of downtown and is where the A, B, and E lines all kind of connect there in downtown. That would be very likely the ticket office, very centrally located, and there you could apply for the low income fare program, which allows you to ride transit for much cheaper. So now let's talk about the main hub there, which I mentioned briefly, and that's Union Station. So this is what I talked about last time. So there are 3-ish major things about Union Station. Well, 4 really. You have the station building, which houses a waiting area. It would have ticket machines in it. It would have a desk where you could talk with people. There would be customer service and train information. There would be large departure boards that would tell you when the next trains are leaving. There would be shops in here, restaurants, cafes. There would be lots and lots of stuff to see here. But there are 3 major services that service this station. There would be the regional rail, which would probably have the largest presence at the station. There would be the metro trains, which would be underneath Union Station. And then there would be a bus loop, which is right next to Union Station, that carries the regional buses as well as likely some other city routes. The regional rail trains are accessed by going to the 2nd floor and going across. There would be 2 sky bridges that extend from the building that go over the actual platforms below. And this sky bridge would allow you to access any of the platforms that the trains serve. And then from there you could take an elevator or stairs to platform level and board the train. There would be a departure board in here telling you the next train to leave, what track it's on, where it's going, and the time. It would tell you all of this information. So you could go into the station building, or you could go to each platform, and you could see where trains are leaving and when they are leaving. And the fare card readers within Union Station would be located just before the sky bridges. They would not be on the platforms at all, or even in the sky bridges. It would be within Union Station building itself, right before the sky bridges. That way it's obvious that you only tap when you enter and exit Union Station. You only, if you're getting off the train at Union Station and you're going to transfer to another, you're not going to tap again at Union Station because that's going to be part of your transfer. You only tap if you're exiting or if you're entering the station. To access the metro stations, you go over to one side of the building and you'll find a set of escalators and stairs and elevators that will take you down to platform level. And once you're at platform level, you'll find the fare gates that you'll tap your card to get through, and the metro trains will just park here. That's it. And in that same area where you'll find stairs and escalators to the metro platform, you'll find a side exit that takes you out to a bus loop. And this bus loop again would be to carry all of the regional lines. All regional bus lines would serve that Union Station bus loop, and there would be space for some additional routes as well. And so they'll just park here. There'll be lots of bus bays that you could get on the bus at. And that's kind of it. So now let's talk about density. So each station is pretty much going to have transit-oriented development. It's going to be a transit-oriented city, really. So all of the stations are going to pretty much have density. Lots of the further out stations, it wouldn't be as obvious, but there would be some mixed use, mid-rise, low-rise, 4 or 5 story buildings at the stations. You could live at, you could work at, you could dine at, anything really. But a large chunk of all of the metro stations on the system would have high-rise towers. I would say at least 15 stories or higher would be at pretty much all the metro stations, especially as you get closer to downtown. The idea is that you could live right at the metro station, you could work there, you could visit friends there, and heck, you may not even need to take the transit, you could just live there your whole life. Something I find important about this as well is the fact that there would be homeless shelters at the stations. So if there was somebody in need of housing but can't afford to pay $1,500 a month, then they don't have a job, they're living on the street, they could go to these stations and there would be a homeless shelter right there. And that way they could go there, they'd have a roof over their head, and they would have services to turn their life around. Whether that's counseling or drug abuse services or job services of like, how do I make a resume, or how do I turn my life around and start contributing to society as part of the working class? How do I actually become part of the society? So those services would also exist at many of the stations, at least closer to downtown, and maybe you could even make buildings easily convertible from office spaces or whatever, or even hotels, into homeless shelters if the area suddenly skyrockets with homeless population. I'd also like to talk about the Skywalk station. So on my metro station map, you'll see a station called Skywalk. Now, this is just kind of something that's been floating around in my head, but I think it would be kind of cool to design, and I'm pretty sure these exist already, but to have lots of buildings in this area that are connected by sky bridges. So you could actually go into the metro station here, and you could walk around into the building, and you could start to walk on an extensive network of sky bridges. And it would just be a ton of bridges that you could just walk on in case you wanted to. And it would be able to get you between building to building without having to walk outside. I'd like to mention zoning as well while we're talking about density. Of course, the downtown area is going to be highly dense and have lots of commercial and residential, but it's pretty much going to be commercial spaces in the downtown area. Then as you get beyond the river and you start getting to where it might sprawl, it wouldn't really sprawl. The neighborhoods would have to be smartly designed, and there would be grids of transit lines through here. And the density would range from high-rise towers to, you know, getting lower and lower density. There would be lots of townhouses in the area, so lots of people could live here. And then the housing would go into, you know, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. And then eventually you would scale down to single-family homes that are pretty much attached, one next to the other, next to the other, next to the other. You'd find that, and then it would gradually space out from there. But if you're anywhere near a transit station, a metro station, regional rail station, or whatever, it's not going to be that low density. You're going to have the higher density because more people are going to want to live near the transit because shorter walk to the transit station. And my general rule of thumb here would pretty much be, ideally it would be kind of quarter-mile walk or less to a bus stop or transit stop. Every home and every business would be accessible within a quarter-mile walk of a transit stop, but I realize that's not super realistic, so I'll even say half-mile. If it's a half-mile or less from a bus stop or a transit stop, you're good to go. Nothing would be more than a half-mile walk or a half-mile bike ride away from a transit stop, whether it's a bus stop or a metro stop, or a streetcar stop, or regional rail, or anything. Everything would be that close together, and it would be that gridded. It would be amazing. And people would use it. I know they would, because there wouldn't really be another option. There wouldn't be a need for parking lots. There wouldn't be a need for on-street parking. There wouldn't be a need for any of that. The only parking necessary is bike lockers, which take up a very little amount of space considering how many bikes you can fit in them. You would need places to park buses. There would be bus garages and industrial areas and streetcar yards, and all of this stuff would be necessary, but you could even build development above these streetcar yards so that the space is more used. And yeah, you're also going to need places to park taxis and delivery vehicles and things like that. But in general, there's not going to be surface parking lots for cars. There might be some areas of on-street parking because, you know, you can't just outright ban cars. And the houses will still have a driveway that could fit one, maybe two cars in it. And maybe room for on-street parking. And you would, you know, let's say people are moving in and out of a house, you're still going to need a place to park a U-Haul truck, for example. So things like that are you're still going to need a driveway. But if you don't own a car, your entire garage could be used for storage or for anything at all rather than parking a large vehicle in. Well, I think that's about it for this video. I think I've talked about pretty much everything I wanted to talk about with this city. So now, next week, we can get back to more normal uploads from this channel, and you can start to see more transit stuff again. I mean, yes, transit is obviously a heavy focus and a heavy influence for my Car-lite city that I've created from scratch. But as I said at the end of, or the beginning of the last video, this is a thought experiment. This is a pipe dream. You know, this is what's going on through my head. But what we need to be doing is fixing our own cities to not be so car dependent, because it's stripping us of our quality of life bit by bit for decades. And I hope I've made my point, and if not, I again highly recommend watching channels like Not Just Bikes or things like that that have really opened my eyes to how poorly designed American cities have become. So anyways, I thank you for watching this, and I'll see you soon.